Among the affairs, deep creative differences, and even death threats, it's no wonder that these celebs can't stand Clint Eastwood. Michael Moore is famous for directing provocative documentaries. 2002's Bowling for Columbine, for example, took aim at American gun culture, while 2004's Fahrenheit 9/11 was a polemic about President George W. Bush. Standing in the opposite ideological corner to Moore is Clint Eastwood, who's a strident supporter of Republican causes. In January 2005, both filmmakers attended the National Board of Review Awards dinner. As Moore recounted on Facebook, Eastwood addressed the crowd and threatened to kill Moore if he were ever to ambush interview him. The audience laughed, but then Eastwood yelled, "I mean it, I'll shoot you." Moore also made sure to note, "I should probably stop here and say that I like Clint Eastwood, and I think he was a great filmmaker, but something started to go haywire with Clint in the last decade." 10 years later, after Eastwood's American Sniper became a box office smash, Moore took to social media once again. As he wrote, "My uncle was killed by sniper in World War II. We were taught snipers were cowards. We'll shoot you in the back." After various media outlets picked up Moore's comments, he took to Facebook to explain himself. He claimed to be talking about snipers in general, and not necessarily American snipers specifically. However, he did also say, "Too bad Clint gets Vietnam and Iraq confused in his storytelling, and that he has his characters calling Iraqis savages throughout the film." In a 2016 interview with Esquire, Clint Eastwood tacitly approved Donald Trump, who was in the midst of running for president. As he put it, "I haven't endorsed anybody. I haven't talked to Trump. He's said a lot of dumb things, but he's onto something, because secretly everybody's getting tired of political correctness. Kissing up. That's the kiss-ass generation we're in right now. We're really in a p***y generation. Everybody's walking on eggshells. We see people accusing people of being racist and all kinds of stuff. When I grew up, those things weren't called racist."
Do you feel that Trump can go all the way?
I don't know. I don't know. It's an unusual thing he's done so far.
After the interview hit newsstands, detractors spoke up, including Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist Flea, who turned the movie star's own words against him. As he put it in a since-deleted tweet, "Hey Clint Eastwood, count me in as a p***y as we aspire to evolve above racism." In 1968, the musical western Paint Your Wagon began filming in eastern Oregon. The plot was about a young woman played by Jean Seberg who's set to marry a significantly older man, but she falls in love with his younger gold mining partner, played by Clint Eastwood. It turned out to be a case of life imitating art, as Seberg and Eastwood began a romantic relationship despite both being married to other people at the time. When news of the affair spread, Seberg's significantly older husband, French author and diplomat Romain Gary, visited the set and challenged Eastwood to a duel. He wanted to fight Eastwood in the set kitchen at sunrise, with their fists as the weapon of choice. Eastwood refused to participate, though, fearing that the scrap could hold up production of the movie. So Gary then went home and worked on his novel White Dog, while Seberg filed for divorce, assuming Eastwood would do the same. Alas, he did not. In many ways, Clint Eastwood picked up right where screen legend John Wayne left off. Back in the 1940s and 50s, Wayne was one of the most bankable movie stars around, as he played a series of Old West figures and war heroes. Eastwood made his name doing much the same thing in the 1960s and beyond, but he also took the Western into new territory, particularly with 1973's High Plains Drifter. Unlike Wayne's Westerns, the characters in Eastwood's films were more morally ambiguous. In other words, they were grittier, darker, and more realistic than his predecessor's output. After High Plains Drifter, Eastwood considered making another brooding Western called The Hostiles, and he offered a leading role to Wayne. The older actor passed on the part with a letter. As it turned out, he didn't want anything to do with The Hostiles, because he thought Eastwood was ruining the Western, or at least disrespecting his preferred style of the genre. As Eastwood later revealed to film critic Kenneth Turan in 1998, "John Wayne once wrote me a letter saying he didn't like High Plains Drifter. He said it wasn't really about the people who pioneered the West. I realized that there were two different generations, and he wouldn't understand what I was doing."
That'll be the day.
Eastwood replied to the letter with a rewritten script for The Hostiles, which Wayne took out onto his boat and tossed into the ocean. Among Clint Eastwood's most iconic movies were three loosely connected westerns directed by Italian filmmaker Sergio Leone. A Fistful of Dollars, or A Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Starring Eastwood as the man with no name, all three have endured as some of the best westerns in history. The director and actor nearly made one more western together in the 1960s, Once Upon a Time in the West. When Leone described the film to Eastwood, the latter couldn't understand one of the script's more complicated moments. He also didn't like how Leone envisioned the movie as an ensemble piece, which meant that Eastwood would have to share top billing. He ultimately passed on the offer, and his role went to Charles Bronson instead. Leone's complicated feelings for his former star were on display during a 1984 interview with American Film magazine. When asked to compare Eastwood with Robert De Niro, star of the Leone-directed Once Upon a Time in America, he explained, "If you think about it, they don't even belong to the same profession. Robert De Niro throws himself into this or that role, putting on a personality the way someone else might put on his coat, naturally and with elegance, while Clint Eastwood throws himself into a suit of armor and lowers the visor with a rusty clang. Eastwood moves like a sleepwalker between explosions and hails of bullets, and he is always the same, a block of marble."